Hey everyone, this is Cyresiath. This video is going to be the second in a series I'm doing where I will cover all of the epic fighter cookies, kits, mechanics, rotations, and best armor sets. This one's going to be for Jalapeño cookie. I know there's a lot of confusion surrounding her, and a lot of people don't quite understand how to use her, or maybe think they have an idea but aren't exactly sure. So hopefully this video is going to help dispel some of that and let you all know how Jalapeño cookie is played exactly. So first I'm just going to cover her kit really quick. I'm not going to read this like word for word, I'll just kind of go over it all. So her passive is her charge stacks. Whenever you use her special skill or ult, you gain charge stacks, and then after using a charge attack you enter an enhanced state where your basic attacks become what's called bomb bolts, and they deal additional damage over what they would usually do. Her basic attack, her normal basic attack is just called hot shot, and then when it's enhanced it's bomb bolts. Pretty much, as you'll see later, you always want to be using bomb bolts. You'll never want to be using hot shot if you're doing like bosses or anything like that. And then her charge attack, hot snipe, you hold the bar down and it consumes a certain amount of the charges from 1 to 3 to release a charge attack that gets bigger and deals more damage as you use more of those stacks. Her special skill is the Jalapeño trap. You pretty much just throw this down and either if it contacts an enemy it explodes, or after a little bit of time it explodes. And it also gives you 2 stacks of the sparks. The ultimate is Spicy Sniper Bolt. Whenever you use it, it shoots out a big bolt that does a good amount of damage, but a lot less than you'll see from other ults. But then it has delayed hits that deal even more damage than the initial hit after about a second. And it also does a few things at higher promos, as you'll see. So that covers it for the kit. We can go through the promos now. So P2 is almost necessary for Jalapeño. Whenever you dash, you gain a stack of spark, which is her charge bar. And it also increases the number of drill bolt hits by 2. So if we go back here, you can see drill bolt, which is the hot snipe. It shoots a drill bolt. They're really confusing with the terminology. It goes from 3 to 5 hits to 7 or 5 to 7 hits. So it makes the minimum one really powerful actually when it's hitting for 80% times 5. And there's also another effect where the first one gets no bonus damage, but the 2 charge drill bolt gains 10% extra, and the 3 charge drill bolt gains 20% extra. So that's something to be aware of, but the 1 bar is still way better in terms of charge efficiency at least. Then P3 normal, plus 8% in all these stats. P4, damage increase for bomb bolt, which is that enhanced basic attack. It goes up by plus 17.5%, and this is just for the bomb bolt when you're in that enhanced state after using a charged attack. And then P5, this one's really big. After you use your ult, which is the Spicy Sniper Bolt, you enter the Fierce Flame state for 4 seconds, which is the enhanced state I was talking about. And during this specific Fierce Flame state, not any others, you fire 2 bomb bolts per attack instead of just 1. And it also increases your ult damage by 50%. So this one's really important for fighting against bosses. It's not very important for example, hamster helpers or other things like Labyrinth with a lot of enemies. This one's not as important, but it still can be depending on the situation. I'd say in general, if you're trying to kill mobs, all you really need is P2, maybe P3, but for bosses and stuff you do need these 2. And that about covers it for her kit. I'll actually include her artifact this time. Her preferred artifact is Aim Down Spice, and this just gives you elemental damage after you use a basic attack and crit damage after you use a special skill or ultimate. Remember, it is both special skill or ultimate, but you usually want to be proccing it with a special skill if possible. Alright, now that we have her kit overview done, they do give us a lot of details about the damage numbers and such, but they don't tell us too much about the timings, especially for the 2-bar attack. So we're going to go into the Happy Flower fight, and I'm going to show a few demonstrations about the timings so that we can collect numbers and have an idea of what her ideal rotation might look like based on some DPS numbers. Alright, hopefully that wasn't too boring for you all. Now we're moving on to the sheets, which are arguably more boring. So I've got pretty much all the data from those demonstrations collected here and processed. So as you saw, for the 1-bar attack, it gave you that enhanced state for 3 seconds, and you could fit in 5 attacks, no matter what you did, whether you put a skill in the middle or if you did the dash cancel or not. For 2 bars, it was 7 attacks. It was a little bit tighter, so if you did a skill in the middle, you would only really be able to hit 6, and that's the same for the ult, because the ult also gives you that fierce flame state for 4 seconds. And then 3 bar, I recommend you do 8 attacks, but as you saw in the video, I could fit in 9. The spark goes away right at the end of that 9th attack, so it's really tight. I do not recommend doing this usually. And then, like I said, for the ult, same thing as the 2 bar, 7 attacks, but don't skill in the middle, because then you'll only be able to get 6 in, and that's a pretty big damage loss for the ult. And then next, we've got the time between each of the charged attacks. So pretty much what I did with this is the first frame that an orange pixel showed up in the charge bar is when I started the timer and ended the timer, and then I took the time between when those orange bars showed up. There's a little bit of error in that because I may have released the bar a little late on some of them, but hopefully I was pretty close. And these are the numbers, these are the damages that you get from each of those attacks. And then this is the DPS, just taking the damage divided by the total time it took to charge and release that shot. And then for the full combos, this is where you would use however many bars it says and then attack this number of times. So for the 1 bar, we had a DPS of 393, 2 bar 416, and 3 bar 422. And you'll notice the one for the 3 bar charged only actually is more DPS overall, but one reason you can't just do a ton of 3 bars is because you don't have enough charges of spark to even do that to begin with. If you keep trying to use 3 bar attacks, you'll very quickly run out, even if you're dodging every frame you can. So that's one consideration in the rotation I'm about to show, or some of the rotations I'm about to show. It's charge management, and using that dash cancel that I showed earlier is actually really important in doing the full combo with the 3 bar attack. So speaking of the rotation, I'm going to pull some of this data together. I'm going to do a few different variations on the rotation, but from this data we can see we kind of want to prioritize the full 3-bar attack or using 3-bar charges whenever we can, because those had more DPS than using 1 or 2 charges. So we're gonna move into the game again and see how all these rotations do against Happy Flower. So the demonstrations I didn't do a voiceover, but for these ones I am going to because the sounds aren't as important here. So this one is the 3-bar 9 bomb bolt combo. I said earlier I don't recommend using 9 bomb bolts, and that is definitely still true even though I'm showing this off. This took like 20 attempts for me to get right. It is very difficult to get all the 9 bomb bolts in. So even though I did it one time, probably don't do this if you're trying to maximize your DPS. So next up, this is the more reasonable one where you do 8 bomb bolts instead of 9. So you can see you do the ult and then 7 bomb bolts, skill at the end, 3 bar, and then you count to 8, and that use a skill in the middle during that. That would normally be when Peach ults up, so you want to get your second skill out while you can. And then you just keep going, 3, dash, and then count to 8. You might need to do another dash in the middle there for bar management, and then one before again. And you can space those dashes in wherever. You'll usually be dashing to dodge the boss anyway. So this one is 2 bars instead. So even though we said that the 3 bar is probably optimal, I went ahead and tested with 2 and 1 bar as well, just to confirm the numbers on the final rotation. So same thing as before, we're doing 2 bars and counting to 7. You'll notice earlier I did try to squeeze in a skill and it sounds like I got 7 attacks in, but one of those attack sounds played despite the basic not actually landing if you go back and look at the numbers. And then here's the 1 bar, so same thing, just use the ult, 7 hits, use skill on cooldown, and then I'm using 1 bar of the charge, hitting 5 times, and then dash cancelling. After I use the charge attack, I mean. And as you saw earlier in the 3 bar 8 attack combo, you do need to do that dash cancel for spark charge management. It's really important. And I don't think it makes the animation any shorter. I think the dash is actually longer than the animation at the end, but here is the 1 bar spam. This one was kind of just for fun to see. Well, I was interested to see what the DPS on it was, but it was mostly for fun. I don't think this one will stack up against the others, but it's definitely fun to watch. And also, if you don't have P4 and P5 Jalapeño, you want to be doing this, I think. I think this is better than the, if you're P3 and below, I think this is better than the enhanced basics. So with all those rotations done and recorded, I went ahead and put all the numbers into the DPS sheet, and I'm going to run through some of the assumptions I made while I was building this. So I was doing this for a full Kraid team, the current team that I'm pretty sure is used. We've got Peach ulting around the same time that Mala ults, which activates Falling Stars as well. Mala, I believe, is running newest formula. I'm just assuming that all the stacks are up all the time. There's Crushed Pepper with Snow Strider, Going Beyond activates as well, and then there's Mala's Res Shred, and the Ghost Captain defense buff, or debuff, and then the Magician set buff as well. All of this, I'm assuming, activates at the same time. I know that's not really what's happening. You can't get all these to activate at the same time. It's pretty much impossible, but that's kind of what I assumed just to make it easier on myself with the numbers. And then for 3 more seconds after that first 10 seconds, you see we only lose the Going Beyond buff. But then after 13 seconds, we lose a couple more. So that is going to be newest formula because Mala's ult stopped hitting, and then I'm assuming we lost the Res Shred. In reality, you can keep this Res Shred up for longer because of Mala's P5, but again, I didn't want to spend like 20 hours trying to figure out Mala Cookie. And then the next 2 seconds after that, you still have a little bit more time on Magician set, but this is when you've lost the Mala ult buffs, and then after that you finally lose Falling Stars, Magician, and your Ghost Captain. So you just have one more second of Peach ult and Snowstrider, and then it's just Snowstrider for the rest of it, because Snowstrider should be online 100% of the time, I believe. And then all I did is I went through those recordings, and frame by frame, I assumed that this 10 seconds started the moment the little, in the top left corner, that character portrait that appears, once the red bit of it kind of collapsed, the last frame that it was active is when I assumed this 10 seconds started. And then from there, I just added 600 frames, 180 frames, etc., and had the cutoffs of when the damage numbers appear before or after those frame cutoffs. Counted them up and put them in these bins. I believe this one is the 3x8 basics one, and I have all of these saved in their own little sections. I'm going to share this spreadsheet as well, and you can see the frame counts I had up here as well. So yeah, you can reference this spreadsheet if you need. None of these link to any other sheets, they're just a save of the menu. You can see I cut it off below, but this is the main one. So if you do use this sheet, what you want to do is copy rows 4 to 24, and then go back to menu, paste it in A4. You don't have to do this, just paste it straight up, and it'll import the new stuff and it'll update and output appropriately. And that's how you do that part. Now, before we move on to these numbers here, I need to make a correction to the video. There was a previous uploaded version where I completely forgot that Jalapeño's artifact only is up for 8 seconds after her ult or special is used. So we're going to have to go through and make a new rotation with that in mind. I'm also going to correct these numbers on screen to show the new DPS, factoring in the fact that we didn't have uptime on her artifact during these rotations. So we're going to move into the Celius fight this time, because I needed a boss that wouldn't die as quickly, and you'll see a rotation with me incorporating some dodges as well, so you can see some of the timings on that. I will say, this rotation video took me over an hour to get. It's really hard to get this rotation right, but I'm going to talk my way through it and try to help you through the steps and some of the timings on it. Alrighty, so here in the Celius fight, I'm going to have some text on screen showing some details about the rotations. It'll pretty much tell you the order that you need to do things in. The way you interpret it is pretty much, those seconds counters is the time in the ult cooldown that I use the skills, and that's just to make sure that the artifact is always up. This rotation is built completely around the artifact and making sure you're keeping it active with the skill. So this is the first ult cycle, we're moving into the second one soon, and these all differ because you have to have different skill placements depending on how many bars you have of it. During the double skill ult cycle, you have an extra bar of your skill ready because you get 3 skills per 27 seconds, and the ult is every 30 seconds. So every few ult cycles, you're actually going to have an extra skill, and you want to get that one out while going beyond is still active if possible. And the second one you also want to get out during going beyond. So we use both of those in the first 10 seconds of the ult cycle. And then the normal ult cycle, this is when you don't have 2 stacks of the special skill before you're done shooting your 7 shots from the ult. And you can see the numbers on screen there again. Those are the numbers you want to follow. It's the charge attack closest in proximity to the second counter that's on the screen that you want to prioritize counting. And back in the sheets here, so I've processed all of the attacks from all of those rotations I showed you. Or not all of them, just the normal ult and double skill rotation. The initial one didn't matter as much to me, but I put them all in my menu here, calced it all, and for specifically the 3x8 basics one, since that was the best of the performers earlier, I went in and added an artifact crit damage cancel. So if I go into my debuff sets, you can see here RDCD cancel takes away that 70% crit damage that you get from the artifact. So that was just to compensate for the loss in crit damage you get for those last 14 seconds. It actually lined up pretty much perfectly that during this time frame you lose your crit damage based on the rotation I did, so I didn't actually have to make a new bucket, which was really convenient. But I'm going to remove that so that we still preserve all this for you. And then if I go back into output, these are all of the DPS numbers compared. I'll go ahead and put that there. So you can see the old DPS for the 8 basics was 151,737, and it goes down to 147,676 when you lose that crit damage for the last 14 seconds. Not as big of a difference as you might think. That's because so much of your DPS is coming from burst that losing 70% crit damage for 14 seconds actually doesn't matter all that much, but it's still important because you get higher DPS by following the new rotation I showed. And you can see the normal ult cycle you get a little bit less damage, and then the double skill ult cycle you get some more because you're able to get that second skill in during burst, and that can help out a little bit for your damage. So yeah, these are a lot harder to do in my opinion, but you have a little bit of leniency. You don't have to be as perfect as I was, and I would not recommend dodging right after you ult like I was doing. The timing on that's really difficult. You have only a few frames that you're able to dodge after using a basic where you can still get that 7th one in. So if you're in Champions Raid, for example, just rely on your shield if you're about to get hit, unless you absolutely need to dodge out of the way of something after you ult. And I think that about covers it for the changes in this video. I'm gonna resume back to the rest of the recording I have, so all these numbers are gonna change. I'm gonna pull this menu back up, but just remember that all of the DPS for these should be a little bit lower in reality. I didn't want to go through and change all this because that would take me like 30 minutes, and I already spent a long time making the numbers for this update. So just remember, use these cycles. The damage is going to be better if you do that. And the rest of my points should be pretty much valid for the rest of them. You do want to do the 3-bar 8 basics cycle like I recommend later. And yeah, let's go back to the rest of the video. So for each of these rotations, I went ahead and found the DPS, and just to clarify some things, I added the basic scaling as well, because the skill scaling and ultimate scaling are the same for each of these rotations. It's always 3 skills, 1 ult, but the number of basic attacks you do changes. So you can see the 9 and 8 basics were pretty much the same DPS. The 9 one went a little bit lower because it's just how the buffs line up with when you're able to get your attacks out. The 9 basics just happened to not... You spent a whole second charging your 3-bar charge attack, but you weren't able to get the shot out before some of the buffs wore off, so it just barely hit that threshold of not being in the buffs when it landed, and that's why the DPS is lower. There's no other reason than that. Single bar spam, you can see the damage is not much lower, but it's lower. And then the 2-bar 7 basics, actually I got higher DPS, but it's lower scaling overall. So this will honestly depend on the timings and everything, whether your 3-bar 8 basics or your 2-bar 7 basics is better. For my situation, it just happened that the timing worked out pretty well, but I think it's better to use the 3-bar 8 basics because, as you can see, you actually get less scaling out in your 30 seconds when you do 2-bar 7 basics. So I think this is just a case of the timings lining up weirdly for me. It'll be different in your case, I think, and as far as I know, this is the combo that people use in Champions Raid anyway. And then 1-bar 5 basics, the DPS is definitively lower on that one, so that one's pretty safe, you don't have to do that one. And then I also went ahead and compared all of the armor sets. This is assuming that Peach buffs are active, so you have that elemental percent from Peach. Some of the armor sets do prefer to have some elemental if Peach is not present, but you almost always want Peach to be present if you're trying to maximize your DPS. So, as you can see, Suspicious Hunter just wins out completely. I think everyone knew this, you want to run Suspicious Hunter on Jalapeño. Now, I will say, what everyone runs isn't always the right thing. I'll have a video out after, I think, a few more of these for Cream Soda, and as some of you might have seen, there are some whispers that Suspicious Hunter is actually her best set now, and I contributed to some of the calcs that found that out. We'll see if it's actually true, but always do have some scrutiny on the best armor sets for cookies. Hopefully my video series that I'm doing will dispel some unsurety on that front. But yeah, you can see I have all the hidden powers here. Let me go ahead and list these out. So this is the format that these roles are in. It's elemental attack first, then attack percent, then crit rate, then crit damage. That's how these are listed out. And that's for each of the armor sets. You can see TBD is the next best, but if you're not running Suspicious Hunter on her, you pretty much want to be running Ghost Captain as the support DPS build, because none of these other sets are really worth building on Jalapeño when Suspicious Hunter does this much better. If you're trying to like specifically use her ult or her skills in something like Labyrinth, maybe you want to go for, I would say probably Sugar Feather or Mysterious Wander. TBD, you have to hit a tag to get that attack ink active, but if you are hitting tags, then that can be really strong. But yeah, for stuff like Labyrinth, maybe one of these alternative sets would work if you have it built, if you have the resources for that, but really just run Suspicious Hunter. It'll give you enough damage unless you're like trying to shoot for Grandmaster. And I don't know if I missed anything just to cover my bases. This is assuming she's using her own artifact, which is Aim Down Spice, and I can actually just go back to the other sheet. Did I miss anything else? Let me set this back to Suspicious Hunter. No, I think that's it. Oh, and this is how I determine all of the hidden power rules for all these. Pretty simple, I just input all the things in my loadout builder and pull up the hidden powers right here. But yeah, I think that about covers it. Like I said, for Ghost Captain, just to say this in at least one of my videos, the reason people use Ghost Captain on DPS cookies nowadays in Champions Raid and even in Ranked Raid now is because the damage boost you gain both when you're using Ghost Captain and for your allies outweighs the DPS losses that you get from running Ghost Captain. If I went and took away all of the Ghost Captain buffs from all of here, you'd see that the Suspicious Hunter DPS drops actually quite a bit. And same for Ghost Captain, its own DPS is buffed by itself, by that resistance, or not resistance, defense shred effect. So it's generally worth using it on your DPS cookies for one of them if your supports aren't running it, which usually they aren't now because they have better armor sets. And yeah, in the future I plan on doing one of these videos for, I think Lemon Zest is the next I have planned, and then Basil Pesto, because those two are also kind of difficult ones to wrap your head around, their rotations, and get right. And they might still be a bit before they're out because I'm going to be having to spend a lot of time figuring out the rotations for myself, but those are the ones you can expect next. And then after that, I think I'm going to go in release order, so like Cream Soda and all of the other epic fighters that were here on release, and then I forget the release order that came in. Kohlrabi, I think, was in there. But I'll figure that out and I'll post all those eventually. I'm also going to have a video for Frostrock, I think is the upcoming cookie's name. So be on the lookout for that. I'll try to get that as soon as I can after he releases. I might also make a video for the Earth support cookie once it releases. But don't expect many more support cookie videos, at least until after the fighter series is done, because I'll have to figure out the format I want to do for support cookies and everything. But I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I think in terms of conclusions for this, you want to stick with the 3-bar 8 basic set that people have been doing in Champions Raid. I don't think there are any big shakeups I have for that. And then obviously Suspicious Hunter, it's just the clear choice for Jalapeño. And yeah, have fun using Jalapeño and good luck out there.